So I'm ready for questions, and I will repeat questions as you ask. Yes?
So when I was, obviously we've all been researching the candidates as well, and
Mm-hmm.
as I was looking at the comparison between Durham and that area that you're serving and then the Lexington area, I saw a lot of similarities. Could you talk a little bit about how you think those two communities compare or contrast, and lessons learned that you can bring here, or those types of things?
Okay. So just to repeat your question, you've been doing some research, and I imagine a number of you have. And so you asked, what are some of the similarities between the Durham community, and I would extend it to say the whole Research Triangle community of Durham, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill, and the Lexington, Fayette, Bluegrass community. There are a lot of similarities. Obviously, both have very strong university and academic presence in the communities. They are both, from what I know of Lexington and Fayette, they're both doing pretty well economically as compared with other parts of the states that they're in, and as compared with the rest of the country. They have diversified their economies over the last 10 to 20 years. In the case of Durham, it was tobacco and textiles and that kind of thing, a very manufacturing based, and it's now gone pretty high tech with a lot of things, and a lot of things like that. Both are, I think they would call themselves foodie towns. They have a lot of great restaurants and that kind of thing. There are some similarities in the demographics. If you look at the whole triangle area, the demographics are pretty similar. Durham had a much higher proportion of African Americans. I think that Durham and Lexington have approximately the same numbers or percentages of people from Spanish-speaking homes. It's between 10 and 15% in each community. I think it's right at 13 in Durham, and I don't know exactly what it is here, but you all have done a great thing with the Village branch to have an entire bilingual staff. Are folks here from Village? Anybody here? So anyway, I thought that was pretty cool to get a whole lot. That was one of our objectives, was to get more Spanish-speaking staff, and it was very hard for us to do that. But with the recent hiring, we did hire a few more, but we didn't have a whole library. And in Durham, it's I don't know if you have a single branch because that population is concentrated in that part of the city. In Durham, it's kind of all over. It's sort of scattered. In terms of lessons learned that could apply here. Another similarity, I would say, is that the community really is intensely, and I think this is the case about Lexington, intensely sort of in love with their library. They're very involved and engaged with their library. The library is a prominent part of the community. So those are some things that I would say are similar. I think that I would bring my knowledge of fundraising and donor cultivation and working with all parts of the community to that part of this job. I think that I think that I would bring to this job when I came to Durham, I had a job with staff development and organization development, and I think that there would be lessons I learned in Durham that could be applied here. I think that any library that's going for a full year in sort of a transition period is going to have to sort of pull together and refocus and re-energize, and so I think there are lessons that I would bring from the Durham experience to that. Other questions? Yes? Okay, the question is, what sort of training or best practices have we implemented in Durham to better serve the non-English speaking population? We have encouraged staff. We did not have a staff-wide Spanish language training, and I need to say that Spanish is the primary language that is the non-English language. We do have a number of others. We have a number of collections that we get from what's called the Foreign Language Center in Fayetteville. So we have collections of Urdu and Chinese and a variety of other languages. So we have some collections that way. We have increased our collections budget for Spanish language materials, and especially some of the things that are the most value and importance to people who are Spanish speakers. But the idea wasn't to just have books in Spanish, it was to have as many bilingual books as possible and to have things that parents who might not be literate in English could also learn from. We had a number of programs that we developed with Spanish speaking. We didn't do any. We did a few bilingual programs, but we didn't really get that instituted well. Frankly, I don't think we did a great job of implementing best practices. We were working and working and working, trying to get to that point. But I always felt that until we got a critical mass of people in the library who were on staff who could speak Spanish, we were going to have a very hard time attracting people to come into the library because they were so frustrated when they came in and they could not speak English and could not get help. We did have a Hispanic Services coordinator, and she was great, and a lot of times she would work at different libraries. She mainly went out and did programs in the community, and that worked very well, and she's just always been awesome. But she had a Hispanic Services, is what we called it, sort of a task force made up of people from all around the system that met and that talked about different things, but it never really gelled and got things going. So I really felt that it was going to take getting enough staff in place at all of our locations, and frankly our goal was to always have at least one Spanish speaker on staff at all of our libraries. That was our goal, and we just were not getting there. Other questions? There's about 30 of you here, so, or 40? Yes?
We have a mayor who doesn't particularly value the library. How would you go about developing a relationship with him?
Well, I would want to meet with him and talk with him, especially with the board chair, and as I understand it, the board chair knows the mayor pretty well. So I would want to just make, well, hopefully he'll be here this evening. I think that they've been invited to come at 6 o'clock this evening prior to the presentation this evening. So I'd love to meet him, as well as the vice mayor is a candidate in this electoral race right now. So I'm not going to get into electoral politics, but I would like to meet him, talk with him. If he will come and see the presentation, he'll get a little bit of a sense of what libraries are about and how important they are in the communities, and he'll see from other candidates as well, so get a real good. I think that would be a great introduction to him, for him to public libraries. So I would want to really have a good long conversation with him before I ever started this job, if I were selected. Other questions? Yes. Okay, the question is, how does the executive director relate to and find out about what frontline staff are thinking? Is that correct? Okay. I'll tell you how I operate. First of all, one of the key principles that I operate under, well, it's really a management philosophy, is total quality improvement is what I call it. It has a three-part thing, very simple. Customer focus. That's the key thing that we're about, is making sure we have a strong customer focus. Second part of it is making sure that staff have a part in the decision. They don't make decisions. They certainly don't make final decisions on the big issues that the executive director has to make the decisions on. But they have a big part to do with well, anything that's going to, any decision that's going to be made that is going to affect staff. I want to have staff at the front line and at the middle management levels have some input to that. I'll get back to this in a second. The third part of total quality improvement is data-driven decision making. So this involves benchmarking, it involves learning from other best practices, as you mentioned, trying to understand the best things, and then making sure you have good solid data to base your decisions on. Getting back to the staff involvement part of total quality, I have for the last 15 years worked with quality councils, is what I call them. And they can be for projects to look at certain things like task forces and that kind of thing, or they can be broader, bigger issues. So, for example, in Durham, we created a customer service quality council and a circulation quality council. That was made up, both of those were made up of, well, the circulation one was made up mainly of circulation managers, but also some frontline circ staff. And the customer service quality council was staff from kind of all through the system. The idea there was for the circulation council to look at the policies and the loan periods and the renewals and all of that kind of thing and develop some recommendations that would go to our trustees. And we had an advisory board of trustees, by the way, and to make recommendations. So they made recommendations, and I'll give you just one example. They recommended that we increase our number of holds allowed from 5, which I thought was ridiculously low personally, because I had come from a library that had no limits on holds, if you can imagine. But anyway, they made a recommendation of 50 holds, that we allow everybody to have 50 holds. So I took it to the advisory board of trustees, and we talked through that, and to me, I was okay with 50. I was thinking 100 might be better, but, you know, because I'm so customer convenience focused and all that. And of course, there's this huge workload that these create, as you all know. But at any rate, the trustees also knew that about it, and they wanted us to go with 25. So we ended up implementing and making the final decision at 25. But there was a lot of involvement. So that's one part of the answer to your question. And the other part is that I try to be out in the branches. If my office is in this building, I would try to be out on all the different floors. Not necessarily every day, but pretty regularly. I think if you check with any staff member in Durham, they would tell you that they saw me, that I knew most of their names, and that I was out. Now, we didn't have quite as many staff as Lexington has, but we had about 150 or 180 or so, depending on the time. But I would get out, I would talk to people, I would be there, you know, when I was off work. My wife and I both are kind of fanatics about visiting libraries, and so I like to visit the libraries in the community I'm in too. So that's really the answer. More questions?
Why don't you take 30 minutes and wrap up, Skip?
Take 30 minutes? Bring me a chair, please, if we're going to take 30. Well, I'm very glad to meet all of you, and I was talking with our video person earlier, and I know there's more of you who will watch this later, so I'm thinking of you all too. I appreciate the fact that you'll take time to watch this and watch all 3 of the candidates. You live in a beautiful community, you have a great library system. I would welcome the opportunity to come here and be your executive director. I would like working with all of you, and I would hope for the chance to get to meet all of you. Thank you.